For decades, if you asked a CEO where their budget was going, human resources was often written off as a necessary but kind of unquantifiable expense. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're tracking a fascinating and absolutely essential evolution in modern business. For a really long time, HR was primarily defined by qualitative narratives, stories about company culture or anecdotes about how employees were feeling. And hey, those are important for sure, but they're incredibly hard to pin down on a balance sheet. So today, we're going to look at exactly how HR transitions from a traditional administrative support function into a true strategic powerhouse, using a highly quantifiable, totally CFO-ready framework.
We've all heard the old business cliché of HR being viewed simply as a cost center, right? Picture this. An HR director walks into a boardroom asking for a budget increase. The CEO asks for the expected return on investment, and the HR director can only offer vague promises about morale or culture. Well, they're met with immediate skepticism because they lack hard data. It's a classic hurdle. But today, we're tackling a critical question. How can leaders actually extract and, more importantly, prove measurable ROI from their HR departments? Proving strategic value is no longer just a nice-to-have, it's literally a matter of survival. In today's ruthlessly data-driven landscape, every single department must justify its seat at the executive table. We're going to explore exactly how HR deliverables can be mathematically linked directly to organizational performance.
Here's our roadmap for the analysis. We'll start with moving from support to strategy, then decoding the HR scorecard itself. After that, we'll break down the 4 core components, look at some real-world scorecard applications, and finally, compare the HR scorecard to the Balanced Scorecard.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, from support to strategy.
The transformation from an administrative desk to a strategic partner really begins by unlocking 4 massive benefits. First up, strategic alignment. This makes sure HR initiatives aren't just operating in a silo. They're tied directly to the organization's big picture financial and operational goals. Second, we move to data-driven decisions. This means leaving those vague, qualitative narratives behind in favor of concrete, measurable outcomes. Third, and this is absolutely crucial, it provides incredible leadership visibility. Executives finally get clear, indisputable evidence of HR's value. They aren't just seeing how many people were hired this quarter, they're seeing the actual financial impact of hiring faster and retaining longer. And fourth, it creates a vital feedback loop for continuous improvement, letting teams instantly spot weak areas in HR processes and aggressively fix them before they ever hit the bottom line.
Moving on to Section 2, decoding the HR scorecard.
Now, this framework didn't just appear out of thin air. The HR scorecard is a strategic measurement system that was first popularized by thought leaders Becker, Huselid, and Ulrich. They realized there was a massive missing link in corporate governance, so their entire design was centered on measuring HR's impact on business outcomes. Instead of just tracking what HR is doing day to day, it tracks how those specific activities actively contribute to overall business goals. Think of it like a giant bridge. It connects everyday HR tasks, like running payroll or doing an interview, straight to high-level organizational success. It was a total game changer when it was introduced because it finally gave HR a mathematical voice.
Okay, let's unpack Section 3, the 4 core components.
To truly measure this impact, we have to look at the business holistically. The HR scorecard relies on 4 equal interconnected pillars: financial, customer and employee, internal process, and learning and growth. This isn't just about finding one dominant metric to obsess over. It's about understanding that if you leave even one of these pieces out, the whole strategy is at risk of collapsing. You simply cannot have great financial returns without good internal processes, and you can't have great processes without learning and growth. So let's look at each one of these critical pillars in detail to see how they all interact.
Starting with the financial metrics, this is where HR directly speaks the language of leadership. By tracking hard, fast numbers like cost per hire, the return on investment for training programs, and overall compensation effectiveness, HR proves it has a direct line to the bottom line. Think about training ROI, for example. Instead of walking into the boardroom and saying, "Hey, we spent $50,000 on leadership training last quarter," you're now saying, "That $50,000 training program resulted in a 15% increase in team output, which effectively saved us $150,000. See the difference? That is speaking the language of leadership. You aren't just spending the budget, you're actively optimizing it.
Shifting over to the people side, the customer and employee metrics evaluate how well the organization maintains its morale and talent base. Now you might be wondering, why do customer and employee share the same category here? Well, it's because high employee morale directly correlates to better customer service and higher customer satisfaction. It's a chain reaction that ultimately protects the company's reputation. High turnover is incredibly expensive and totally disruptive to the customer experience, so tracking employee satisfaction, engagement scores, and retention rates gives you a vital pulse on the workforce. It shows leadership exactly how HR is protecting the company's most valuable assets and, by extension, the customer.
Next, we look inward at the operational speed and safety of the HR machine itself with internal process metrics. This lets us gauge things like recruitment cycle time, literally how fast we can fill a critical role. Let's say your recruitment speed is lagging and a crucial senior engineering role sits empty for 3 months. That's not just an HR problem, that's a product delay that could easily cost the company millions in lost revenue. We also measure onboarding efficiency and compliance adherence. A smooth, compliant internal process means the business runs without costly legal hiccups or operational delays. The scorecard essentially proves that internal HR speed directly equals business speed.
Finally, the learning and growth metrics measure future readiness. A business simply cannot survive if it doesn't evolve. By tracking skill acquisition, assessing the readiness of your leadership pipeline, and monitoring participation in career development, HR ensures the company is equipped not just for today's challenges, but for tomorrow's growth. Consider our modern workforce, heavily impacted by AI and rapid tech shifts. In a world where industry skills become obsolete every few years, tracking skill acquisition isn't just a nice-to-have HR initiative. It's the fundamental metric that dictates whether your company will even survive the next decade.
Let's bring this to life in Section 4, Real-World Scorecard Applications.
Let's put this into practice. If you're currently relying on feelings, vibes, and qualitative stories to justify your department, here is exactly how you pivot. You map standard HR functions directly to highly practical, measurable metrics. Look at recruitment. Instead of just counting the sheer volume of hires, you track the cost per hire against the actual long-term quality and performance of that hire. For retention, you stop talking about culture broadly and instead compare the harsh, calculated costs of employee turnover against the real financial savings generated by your improved retention programs. In training, you measure the upfront costs against tangible, tracked improvements in productivity or customer satisfaction. And for succession planning, you literally score your leadership pipeline's readiness against the specific, forecasted growth needs of the organization. This is exactly how you prove value mathematically and change the conversation entirely.
Almost done. Let's wrap up with Section 5, HR versus the Balanced Scorecard. It's crucial to understand that the HR scorecard is actually a specialized offspring of the broader Balanced Scorecard framework. They serve different but fundamentally complementary scopes. The Balanced Scorecard is a really broad organizational tool used by the entire executive team to cover overall corporate finance, customer relations, internal company processes, and organizational learning. It zooms out to look at the entire company's operational health. The HR scorecard, on the other hand, zooms in. It zeroes in specifically on HR's direct contribution, narrowing down the focus to show exactly how human resource deliverables drive those exact same 4 perspectives for the broader company.
And here is the ultimate payoff. By quantifying HR's impact across financial performance, customer and employee satisfaction, internal efficiency, and workforce growth, you achieve something remarkable. You transition your department from an administrative cost center into a measurable profit-driving powerhouse. You finally have a truly CFO-ready framework. You're no longer just supporting the business with payroll and compliance. You are a key, undeniable, and measurable driver of the business's overarching success. We'll leave you with this final thought to ponder as you look at your own organization. Are you sitting at the executive table with stories, or are you sitting there with data? Are you currently proving your strategic value mathematically, or is it time to implement a scorecard of your own? The tools to transform HR from an administrative desk into a strategic powerhouse are right in front of you. It's time to start measuring what matters. Thank you for joining us for this explainer. Now go build that scorecard.